Hi, mathematical thinkers. We are continuing with our lessons on rates and ratios and proportions. And today I will be talking about lesson 8.2, how we solve rate problems using a proportion. And here's our learning target. After this lesson, I will be able to use proportions to model and solve rate problems, and I will be able to identify the value that makes a proportion true. So when I have a variable and a proportion, I'll be able to identify what that variable equals. We have two new vocabulary words or phrases, an open proportion and then the solution for a proportion. So here's an example of a rate problem. We saw something similar in lesson 8.1. The problem says Robin rode her bike at an average speed of 8 miles per hour. At this rate, how far would she travel in 8 hours? In lesson 8.1, we learned about per unit rates. If you can travel 8 miles in 1 hour, then in 3 hours, you can travel 8 times 3 or 24 miles. So that was the per unit example. And then we also used a rate table. I'll get my pen out here. And we labeled it miles and hours, 8 miles in 1 hour. And we see that we're multiplying here. 1 times 2 is 2. 8 times 2 is 16. 1 times 3 is 3. 8 times 3 is 24. So same answer with the rate table. And now we're going to do it as a proportion. So we have 8 miles in 1 hour. This is a ratio here, a rate, equals 24 miles in, we've got a label so we know what those values are, in 3 hours. So this side of the equation is the original rate, and this side of the equation is our equivalent rate. So it gives us the number of miles that Robin rode in 3 hours. So we're going to do another problem. And again, the problems I'm showing you are pretty simple, but if you use this method, you can use it on all rate problems, no matter how complicated they get. So here's a rate table, and I'm going to be talking about words and minutes. Hannah can type at the rate of 40 words per minute. So how long would it take her to type a 200-word essay? Now, the important thing is to look, we've got words and words. So we've got to put that information next to words. So she types 40 words in 1 minute. The question is, how many minutes will it take her to type 200 words? So 40 words, 2 words, 1 minute, and this is what we're trying to solve. So this is where our variable will go. And I'm going to call it T because we're talking about time. All right, now I'm going to take that table of information and translate it into a proportion. So I've got 40 over 1, and this represents words, and this represents minutes, equals 200 words, and we've got our T minutes. All right. Now, this is an open proportion, one of our new vocabulary words. Right now, it's neither true nor false. For most values of t, the proportion would be false. T cannot be any number. It's a very specific number. And the value of t that makes the proportion true is solution to our proportion. So those are our new vocabulary words. Open proportion, because we haven't solved it yet. Once we do and we solve for the variable t, t will be the solution to our proportion. So if we think about equivalent fractions, which we've learned about, 40 times 5, I'll get a different color here, 40 times 5 is 200. 1 times 5 is 5 minutes. Excuse me. So we learned that t equals 5. I've had a cough, and there it is. All right, let's go back. So an open proportion, neither true or false, and the solution of the proportion is the value that makes it true. So here's another example. Amador ran 200 meters in 45 seconds. Let's get our pen. 200 in 45 seconds. And we want to know how long, at this pace, how long would it take him to run 1,600 meters? So again, this is meters. So meters and meters next to the meter piece. 200, how long for 1,600? And we'll call this S, our variable. So this is how we'd set up the rate table. And then to set up our proportion, 200 over 45 equals 1,600 over variable. So again, we can think equivalent fractions. 200 times 8 is 1,600. 45 times 8 is 360. So S equals 360. Started with our open proportion and then found the solution to our proportion. S is equal to 360, so it would take Amador 360 seconds, which is equivalent to 6 minutes, to run this 1,600 meters. Now it's your turn. The directions are read the problem on the next couple of slides. Actually, I think it's the next slide. Create a simple rate table. Remember, this is a rate table. Use the table to write an open proportion. This is my open proportion. And then solve the proportion. So here are 3 problems for you to solve. You can pause the video in order to read the problems, set up your rate table, set up your proportion, and find a solution to each of those problems. In your journal, you'll be working on setting up and solving proportions, and you'll need to use the procedure that I just described. So, do your best. Here's my little graphic for today, and I will see you in class to talk more about ratios, rates, and proportions.